Welcome back everyone to another episode of the Multipliers Club. We've actually just finished filming this episode, but we went on for so long, we're going to have to split into two parts. So this is part one, so you can take notes, you can learn, and then make sure to check out the next podcast for part two. Welcome back everyone to another episode of the Multipliers Club with myself, Joe Todd, and today, unfortunately, just two of the co-hosts, Sam and Luke. Jake, unfortunately, is in hospital. He's suffering with pneumonia, so he's been in hospital for a couple of weeks. We send him our love and hopefully he can get a speedy recovery. So today we're actually going to be talking about property. We've had some good feedback on the podcast so far, so thank you for that to everyone that's dropped us a message. And we've had a few requests to give our take on property. Sam and Luke sat opposite me. They have a rent-to-rent serviced accommodation business. I've obviously got a construction business and looking to get heavily into property this year. Luke's got a buy-to-let property he's had for probably about 4 or 5 years. We're going to give our opinion. And first of all, I think Sam's going to ask us a few questions, not about property, just to mix it up a little bit. Myself and Luke don't know what the questions are or the answers. So over to Sam.
Yes, everyone, it's good to be back in the booth. So we thought we'd start off today's podcast just by asking a couple of questions what are quite relevant in terms of the monetary system, finance and just business, which will probably get all of your brains working a little bit. I know Joe and Luke don't know what the questions are going to be. So are you guys ready for the first question?
I think so, mate.
All right, so question number one to the viewers listening and to you, Joe, and you, Luke. What do you think the average salary is in the UK?
It's low, I know that. 30,000.
I actually was going to say 30k as well, I'm not even lying. Around 30k.
You both saying 30k final answer?
Yeah.
I think so, I reckon average, yeah.
Okay, cool. So the correct answer is 26.7k.
26.7 for the whole UK. Do you know what the London is?
The London's probably a little bit higher. There's a couple of different sources online, but it would say 26.7k. But in London, I could imagine, I mean, even if you're on, say, 32k in London, you probably can't live that much of a nice life.
And there's a higher London minimum wage as well. So if you live in London in a certain place, yeah, you have to, yeah. It's like when I worked at Metrobank, if you worked at a certain Metro banks, you have to get paid more, but then they extended it to all the Metro banks to make sure it was fair between everybody.
I knew, a teacher I was speaking to the other day, I think she's a primary school teacher, she said that. She said if she moves into the Greater London or then into like more central London areas, the pay rise is like massive for sure. Teaching.
See, it comes with like unaffordable housing.
Yeah.
And everything else, I guess. So
do you know what as well is that it'd be interesting to know because of COVID, what changed, because sometimes some people close their offices, right? So let's say you have offices that had so many people there in the first place, they got rid of them, so they got rid of their rent. So then staff working at home don't have to pay travel. So it's like that money actually doesn't even need to go up. Sometimes you could probably pay people less because they're at home.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. So my girlfriend Teely, she her office is in Bank, Central London. They've got a sick office, plush, massive, I think it's like a 35-man office. And I don't know exactly what their rent is, but I know it's like thousands of pounds, like a high figure 5,000s per month. People only go there twice a week.
It's mad, isn't it?
Every Thursday, every Tuesday. But there's still something about having a base in London I think is quite attractive for businesses and for recruitment as a whole. Because you've got to think, if you're based in London, you can get people from Surrey, Essex, Hertfordshire, the whole kind of west side.
I think it's losing its appeal a bit though. And like the other day when I was up in London, where was I? Shoreditch. As you come out, I think it's Old Street Station, if I'm correct. You come out there, honestly, it was crazy. Every single building for like a 5-minute walk to the restaurant was to let. All these offices, just every single one on the road was literally to let. It's crazy.
Mate, that's nuts. I heard something like Canary Wharf as well. If you go Canary Wharf 2019, it's like busy as hell, even trying to get on the train, you ramo. But now, apparently, Canary Wharf has just never been the same. Like post-COVID, it's completely
lost
different.
Its buzz.
Yeah, lost its buzz. Like if you go there and it's not a weekday, it's literally like a ghost town. It's crazy. Right, you guys ready for the second question?
Let's go for it, mate.
Okay, so this is an interesting question actually. What percentage of the UK population think they will never be able to own their own home? Or never be able to afford a home?
I'd go personally 90%.
90?
90%
It's
of people.
not 90%.
Yeah, I reckon 9% of people won't ever do that. Yeah,
no,
actually,
no way. Because the rental market's getting bigger in the UK, but it's still not that big. It's not like when you look at places like Dubai and stuff, it's a complete renters market. The UK is still not that. I'd say like 1 in 5 people, so like 20%.
20%.
1 in 5.
So 20% of people won't own their own home.
20% of people think they won't be able to afford their own home.
Whereas I'm going.
You're going at
I've got
90. You're way off. There's no way.
What are your
Really?
what are your reasons for 90%?
I think, well, okay, maybe I'm just thinking of our area, especially how much money that you need, like, to actually even get on the property ladder in the first place, to live in.
But like on your road, for example, how many of those are owned and how many are rented? Like 90% are owned.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of them are older people, right? All these young ones, how are they going to do it? It's fucking tough.
Just for a bit of context to the listeners, so in terms of our area, we're in Greater London, Surrey, Zone 5, I'd say, just outside of Zone 5. So it comes with a premium for sure. But there are definitely cheaper places in the UK. But I think even if you look at like Manchester now, it's bread to buy a place. Like Birmingham's rising, Cheshire's high. Everywhere's expensive. Right, do you want to hear the correct answer?
Yeah.
So according to a reliable source of Google, the correct answer of people who feel like they'll never be able to own their own home is 37%.
37.
Which is still a lot of people.
You're a lot closer to me. Fair play.
That's a lot though.
That's good.
That's a lot.
For sure. Still, 100%. I mean, if you look back to our parents' generation, you could buy a house for like 20 bags, 10 bags. You need like £2,000 deposit. And do you know what's interesting is, I was speaking to my stepdad about this actually, to get a mortgage back in the day, if you were, say, self-employed, you could do something called self-declaration apparently. So you get a mortgage on a £1 million house and all you got to do is just tell the mortgage advisor you can afford it and it will take your word for it.
That's basically what caused the recession, right, in 2008.
Huge housing bubble. I think where it's tricky as well though is, especially for business owners, we should talk about this, it's hard to get a mortgage if you're a business owner. It's really, really difficult. I was talking to my mortgage advisor about this the other day because I've been trying to get a mortgage for maybe a year or so, just getting the right advice. And it doesn't matter how much money you've got. Like you could have 100k, £1 million in savings, however much in crypto, they don't care. It's based on tax deductible income. So if you say have a £250,000 investment portfolio, but you pay yourself 40 grand a year, you ain't gonna get a mortgage.
Yeah, when I worked at Metro Bank, I used to have so many people coming in to get loans, get mortgages, etc. And they would be like, I earn 100k. And I'm like, hey, but show me your tax return. And then the tax return has like 12k.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, but I earn 100k. I'm like, yeah, but you don't earn 100k on paper, do you? So like, obviously the bank are only going to lend what you've put through the books. So, and that messes people up, and it actually takes a few years to get out of that because sometimes you need 3 years worth of, like, go back 3 years of history. I
can't talk for past generations, but it would seem just from like what we hear, it's never been harder to get a property.
No,
like in the history of life itself, it's very, very difficult. Question number 3. So, what percentage of businesses fail in the UK within the first 2 years of opening?
2 years.
Within the first 2 years.
I know like 10 years is like 95% or something, but first 2 years, businesses to fail, it's going to be high.
It's high, definitely high, yeah. It's definitely over 50%.
Yeah, I'd say 2 years. I'd probably say half, to be fair.
How many businesses have we given up between ourselves?
Yeah, do they count as failed businesses?
A lot more failed businesses than successful ones.
This.
But what counts as failed? Like, for instance, ones that I've profited well off previous businesses and just stopped them.
Yeah, I guess so.
I guess
failed. Is it given up or
failed?
failed?
I get if it's like you had to liquidate the business or something, then I don't know. I think if it's just like you're saying, just
maybe if it's just straight failed, we'll go straight failed.
Yeah, let's go straight.
I'd still say
75%.
50% in 2 years. I reckon it's like 70% in 5 years, and then like 90% in 10 years. You've only got the facts for 2 years.
I've only got for the first 2 years. So according to a reliable source on Google, and by reliable source I mean the first one I found on Google, over 60% of businesses on average fail within the first 2 years, which is interesting. I actually thought it would have been a little bit higher than that.
Why do you think that is?
Why do I think businesses fail within the first 2 years?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time going in blind, usually when you first start a business, unless you've researched it for years, entrepreneurs by nature are usually risk takers. Like my traits, I know you're quite similar to me, Joe, quite impulsive. I think sometimes there's more self-belief than maybe knowledge. I think a lot of things don't get researched enough. And I also think business in general is just tough. Like, it's hard. Mentally, financially, physically, like that's, in my opinion, probably why a lot of businesses fail in the first 2 years. And also I'd probably say, if you're a business owner, you don't have a manager, a CEO, a managing director, what you can ask for help, unless you've got a good network. What a lot of people don't when they first start business, they're doing it by themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably a reason why.
I also think it depends on what I guess you could say like the events business failed, like even though I didn't actually, or I think I probably broke even in the end. But for me, like really that was, I mean, yeah, of course if it went on to something, but quite early on I realised, you know, just as I stopped wanting to go out and be around that scene, like I was just going to stop. But it was more kind of, it was still a great idea. I still learned a lot from it. I still got experience in a whole new industry. I still made some new good contacts. And so like for me, it was still a success, even though I've stopped it. Like, do you know what I mean? It wasn't really a failure, but it's because I could have kept going if I wanted. It's just, what's the point? It was just fun for a few years, gave me some good experience, and yeah, you move on kind of thing. So
I think a lot of people do give up because they haven't made the money they wanted to make in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
But if they actually persevered with it, like I know for a fact there's businesses that I started when I was younger, but if I carried them on, they would have turned into good business, but got shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, I had good ones, I just left. I'm like, why did I leave that? I was actually making good money, but I always think you can make more money here, whereas
like
so I think a lot of people give it up.
What business, for example?
So like when I used to do the extra work, so I used to be extra in films and like TV programs and that, and I was making money I was approaching agencies, and not just agencies but TV shows that I knew needed extras, and going to them, I can get you more people, and then I would make money off those people. And I was doing that for quite a long time, like a whole year, and I was actually making decent money from it. And if I just carried it on,
Hollywood's #1 agent.
It was good. It's like, it's win-win for everyone. People wanted extra money, they wanted to be in films, wanted to be in TV shows, and then they're getting paid, I'm getting paid, the people are getting, they need a lot of people to be on some shoots would need hundreds of people, literally. Yeah. I wasn't getting hundreds of people, probably got like 30, 40.
Recruitment within the film industry, show industry.
Yeah,
it's almost like having your own agency, really, of showbiz.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, literally, that's it.
Showbiz.
Yeah. So I reckon people give up because they haven't made what they want. Whereas actually, if they carried on, just persevered with it, put more time into it, then it would have done well. Rather than some people switch to another business.
You need to have a passion for it, though. I know. I guess there's a line with that. I know some people say, "Oh, you need to become really passionate about it." I mean, others will say, "Look, that's just bollocks. You don't need to be." But I think there's a balance for sure. Like, you have to have some interest. You have to be fairly passionate about the industry. Want to learn more about the industry. Want to mix with the type of people within that industry. For instance, like the events. Like, I mean, you do love it much more than me. Like, obviously I like them, but for me, especially after COVID, like I've probably been to like 2 house events since, maybe 3. I'm not really a big fan now of going to those events, and everyone's off their nuts and whatever, and I'm just not really down. So for me, like I wouldn't have wanted to stay in that industry for like 10 years, 15 years, where like, you know, whereas other industries, I guess. I mean, I can't say I'm hugely I think for the building, I've always knew I like building things. I want to get to a stage where I'm building like my own houses, doing my own developments, doing, you know, putting my own touch, having my own style left behind in properties. Like, I feel like that's a sick way to just kind of be building a legacy as such. Like, so I always knew, like, having the building company, getting the expertise, getting the contacts, getting the knowledge, doing it how I'm doing it now, I'm going to be able to evolve into like doing it myself, to properly be putting my own touch on like properties, and hopefully
I think most people that have businesses and make decent money, or even just starting out, they always do actually end up want to be in property. Like it interests a lot of people, and there's a load of different strategies that we're probably going to talk about today, so that definitely helps.
Yeah, for sure. Before we go into the property stuff, there's one final question, and this is a very interesting question in my opinion anyway. And I think you guys will both get it wrong by a lot.
Mate. Thank you.
Only because of your circumstances, being quite fortunate, because you work hard. So the question is, what does the average Brit have in savings in 2023? What does the average Brit have saved in that bank account in 2023? And Joe, it is not 100k.
Mate, do you know who was the bad one? Jake. He's lucky he's not here today. I remember on a previous episode he thought like the average earning of the UK is like 70k or something stupid.
We need to get a job at Dial-A-Flight.
I'm going to say £1,000.
1,000.
Yeah.
To be fair, mate, most of them are probably in debt. That's the thing. So they probably got none in sight. Yeah, like the majority is probably like, it's probably like minus 3,000 or something, if that can be an answer. But if it's positive, yeah, I'd say like the whole UK, 5k.
Close. So the correct answer is around 50% of Brits have £6,757 saved, whereas 49% of Brits claim to have no savings at all, which is quite interesting if you look back on the second question about how, 37% of the UK population feel like they'll never be able to own a home. And I can somewhat relate to that because before achieving like small levels of success in business, even when I was in recruitment, I was earning quite good money, but I didn't understand how money works. Like if I took home £4,000, I'd spend 5 and ended up getting myself in a lot of credit card debt. I didn't have any savings until I was probably about 24, I'd say 23, 24. And I remember seeing the prices of property back 2018, it was still less. And I think, how the fuck am I going to do that? Especially when I'm out here going raving every single weekend, partying, going on various holidays. I think a big issue behind it and behind a lot of the UK's problems is nobody or very few people are financially educated. Like credit, for example. I didn't even know what credit was. When I got my first credit card, I thought it was free money. Yeah. I had an interest-free credit card for £3,000 when I was 21. I only finished paying that off when I was 26, which was last year, which is fucking insane. Because I didn't have a mum or a dad I have a mum and a dad, but I didn't have them to talk to me about credit rating and stuff. And it's not their fault. It's because when they grew up, my mum doesn't come from money. My dad didn't come from money. They're not taught about, finances. My mum grew up on a council estate and come from a great family, but, like there's never been any sort of financial education there. And I think that's the case for the majority anyway of people in the UK.
I mean, they teach you it in school, obviously, but they just don't want to. So you don't have a clue. As soon as you leave school, right, say, I'll go to university, here's a 30k loan or whatever, so you can go to university. Here's a credit card, 10 grand, interest free for 3 years. And then, like, if you don't pay off in those 3 years, a lot of them you actually have to pay the interest back that you were for the whole 3 years, which people don't realise, and they just slap with some fat bill.
Question actually, just on that, why do you think they don't teach credit or money in school? I'm interested to get your guys' thoughts on this.
I think they don't need to know without going too deep into it. This could be a mad rabbit hole right now.
Yeah, this could be a bad rabbit hole. But to be honest, I'm always split because I think, yes, they say, you can say, the higher power, the government, the elites, whatever, they don't want you to understand all the, the ins and the outs of how money works, how to build success and stuff. But I think, especially being a smaller country, I think you can have, and it's shown by like, certain Switzerland and even like Finland and stuff like this, that you can actually have a thriving economy of a lot of intelligent people, a lot of people doing very well for themselves, and the whole country can actually, not the whole country, not every single person, but you can have a country that's booming, especially in a world now that we're so connected internationally. Like, I feel like, an economy could work by teaching it, by trying to have as many people possible in the country to be successful, like, and pay well and, invest back into the economy and stuff. Like, you can always bring people in from other countries for, like, if you really take care of the English, your own country, the people that live here, you can always kind of delegate jobs to other internationals, for roles people don't want to be doing and stuff like that, the less paid jobs. I think like Switzerland is a good example. Like, that country's booming its economy. Like, do you know what I mean? They're all just up.
But all you need to do is, like, you could have one lesson on this stuff a week.
Yeah, but I feel like also, like, the way the government, for example, in Switzerland's run, like, they have so many votes a year. They don't have one vote for government every 4 years. They have loads of, like, mini votes. They have, like, 6 to 10 votes a year, I'm pretty sure, on, like, lots of small decisions. So it's a proper democracy where people are involved. And I just think the whole way, that's, like I say, it's a whole nother rabbit hole. The whole way our country's structured, I think, shit. And I think I don't think you should have the politicians running the country. I think you should have, like, successful entrepreneurs that know how to build a team, build a culture, make calculated risks, invest, build like wealth. Do you know what I mean? I think that would work far better in a proper democracy like that, where you have lots of mini votes through the year of a whole load of decisions, and even explaining, look, yes, you might say, oh, we want $2,000 a month given to us for this, but this is what will happen in the next 10 years if we do that. Like what we see with COVID. Oh, furlough. Oh, I want furlough. Oh, let me put in for a 50 grand flipping loan. Okay, and now look, everything's just gone up by, inflation 10% bollocks. Like, what's gone up by 10% in the last 2 years? Nothing. Food shopping, 40% or more. Gas and electric, 40% or more. Like, everything's just gone up crazy amounts. It's not 10%, that's bollocks. Like, literally, things have gone up so much in the last 2 years because, money don't come from thin air. Like, so they've printed this money, gave out all this free money, now you have to pay for it.
It's ridiculous as well, because like to get those bounce back loans, businesses could get up to 50k, and I was seeing it, and they weren't going through like hardly any checks, like because of just how the government wanted it to run.
Exactly.
And like you'd have several businesses you could take out 200k. These people were taking 200k and going straight off with that money.
I know, but I've seen people now getting, they're drawing back and getting people for it and taking them to court and saying they go in prison and stuff. So
I think where people fucked up with the bounce back loans is they were taking out loans with no intention to pay it back. So they were taking out they would start a limited company, they take out a bounce back loan, then they would create that story, they'd make the company insolvent. So obviously they're going to get chased. But I also know people that are taking out bounce back loans, maybe not necessarily for that business, I'm not going to say any names, but they're paying it back. So I think as long as you're paying it back, then it's all right. You're not going to get chased for it.
But I think it's just all, again, like the culture of the whole country. Like, people wouldn't really be doing that in Dubai. They probably wouldn't be doing that in Switzerland. They probably wouldn't be doing that in your Finlands and these types of countries that have a good culture of the country. Our culture of this country is like, you're out to get a pound note. Do you know what I mean? You want to get one up on the government. You want to get one up on your company. You want to get one up
the bank.
It's like everyone's just out on a little hustle trying to get one up, and it's just not a good culture, I don't think.
I heard in Dubai that apparently the owner of Dubai, he will just roll around the city. He'll be in the mall, and he's loved by everyone because of the opportunities created. When would you ever see like Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson just rolling through Westfields in Stratford? It wouldn't happen because there's so much hate for the government in this country. I think we've ultimately lost trust for the government in this country ever since COVID. And we were all locked in our houses, not being able to see our families on Christmas. Like, my family wouldn't come around on Christmas. They were all having parties in 10 Downing Street. Fuck them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got no trust for the government. Without going too deep into this anyway, like, moving on to
save that
property.
for another day. So back to the property. I think first we should clearly state kind of where we're all at property-wise, and what our intentions are moving forward. Obviously, maybe start with you, Luke. You've got 2 properties. I'll let you explain a little bit further.
Yeah, so I think when I finished school, I was like, I knew I want to get property, because everyone said, money's in property. So luckily, it took me a couple of years, got with my best mate at the time, we went halves on a property in South Croydon on a buy-to-let. So that was good. I've had that for, I think, 7 years now.
How much did you pay for that, and what did you have to put down? Yeah,
so me and my best friend at the time, we saved our deposit each, put it together. It's 260k for the property, so it's only 13k each that we had to put in. So we put in 10%, but we lived there for 6 months first, because you have to live there for a certain time before you're allowed to let it out. So after 6 months of living there, we applied to buy to let, and Nationwide at the time said yes. So we moved out and then rented out since then, and luckily we've actually had the same tenants for 7 years now.
Oh, really?
So you do get stories of bad tenants, and I've seen it firsthand, etc., through friends and family, but we've actually, it's one tenant there the whole time, no problem.
What's what you paying a month on the mortgage, and what you renting it out for, and what other cost is there and stuff?
So at the start, we had, the mortgage was £700, right? And then we were renting it out for £1,100. So, and then after 2 years, we actually were allowed to change it into like an official buy-to-let mortgage, right? And the property had gone up by 15%. No, it's gone up from 260k to 300k. So we didn't even need to put any more money in for the deposit, because the money that had gone up by, or got valued back, made up for that deposit. So now, well, at that time, we owned 25% of it, but we actually only, when we first started, only owned 10% of it.
Got you.
And then we changed the mortgage to interest only. So mortgage was 300 quid. So we were only paying £300 a month and renting out for 1,100.
That's good.
But now,
Yeah.
obviously, we just renewed our mortgage and it's gone up. Interest only, like £900.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Gone
Obviously,
up 900. It's at
gone
900.
up to £900.
Gone up to 900.
Actually, you know what? I paid
How much
£1,000
is,
yesterday.
How much is your tenant paying you per month for that?
Now it's gone up to 1,300. So
If only put up 200 a month in 7 years, it's not.
yeah, because I wanted to put. I obviously did debate putting up the money. I could have put it up maybe every year, but I had good tenants.
Yeah.
And if you don't have, let's say I put the money up for the tenants, and then they don't want to renew it, and then they're out of it for 1 or 2 months, straight away it lost £2,000 of revenue really, and that might be the profit.
And have you always had the same tenants, or has that changed?
Like, literally the same family, been there the whole time.
How are they? Are they reliable?
Yeah, they're
Always
sweet.
pay on
Literally.
time?
Yeah, they pay early. They're sweet. I think it's an NHS nurse, you know.
Wow,
so.
that's a dream.
Nice.
In fact, you said to me the other day, because we're thinking about buying a buy-to-let property up north, you said property is the only residual income or passive income that you've ever had. And how many businesses have we all tried?
Yeah.
Between us, a lot. You know, it makes you think. You hear about passive income a lot. Is maybe the only real passive income stream.
Personally, that's what I
Property.
found so far. I'm yet to see anything.
Is it
that's
owned
passive.
in your personal names?
Yeah.
Or in a company? Personal names?
Yes, personal names.
But so now you have to pay tax on the full 1,300 that you're renting it out. So you have to pay full tax on that rather than your profits.
Yeah, I mean,
Would you wear that?
they'll.
That's new, right? That's like
Yes,
just
I think
came.
it's section 24.
So how exactly does that work? Explain that.
So basically, let's say if you own a property, if I go and buy a buy-to-let now in my personal name, so I own the asset, and let's say the mortgage is £500 a month and I was renting it out for £1,000 a month, forget other costs, let's just go off the mortgage and think, you'd think, obviously business-wise, there's £500 profit, you owe your tax on that, whatever percentage, let's say it's 20%, that would be £100 tax I should owe HMRC, right? But actually what they're doing, they're taxing you on the full £1,000. So you'd have to pay £200 if it was 20% tax. So let's say now you didn't have that margin. Let's say the mortgage was £900 and I was renting it out for £1,000. Okay, that wouldn't be great, but just for instance sakes, I'd have to pay 20% on that £1,000. I'd actually be losing money every month. So it's basically, it's terrible, it's shit.
So
and it's
what
to
does that
try and-
mean for landlords, for example, who might have buy-to-let portfolios,
So-
who might just be having their mortgages covered? Does that mean they could potentially lose
Cash
20% every single month? Every single month?
Yeah, cash flow, and obviously there's all the other costs and stuff. So, you know, if you had it managed and whatever else, they don't care. So if it was £1,000 and 10% average to have the property managed, so that's losing £100. Then, let's say there was, you know, you need to put some, you know, some expenses for property maintenance and stuff like that. Then there is obviously the mortgage payments. Like all of a sudden, you might be losing a few £100. A month, because they're taxing you on the full amount of the income.
So what's like, what I can't get my head around, right, is what is the reason for that? Have the government came in and said this is so landlords don't manipulate the rental market as much, or is it just a scheme to make more money?
They're trying to punish basically landlords as such and try to reduce, I guess, the amount of landlords or how much money landlords can be making. Listen, you never know the full reasonings for it, but I think there's always, with something like this, there's always a different route to it. And so the way you need to be doing it now, the way I'll be structuring my properties is to own it in a business. So if you own it if a business owns it, so if you set up a limited company and that limited company owns the asset, now you don't have to, now it's treated the same as a business. So now you don't pay the full tax on just the turnover, you pay tax on the profit and you get to expense everything, same way we do in our businesses.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot more sense to do that.
So maybe for somebody, just to ask you a question on this, if somebody's listening to this podcast, they saved a bit of money, they've wanted to get involved in buy-to-let for a while, what would your advice be to them to set up a limited company?
To set it up in a limited company. So I think before I would always set it up in a limited company anyway, but now for definite. I think before, the question you'd have to ask yourself is, how big do you want a portfolio? What's your goals? I think ultimately, I'll come back to that question in a sec, but I think for me, if someone's trying to get into property, there's so many different strategies in property. I would say, like, the first questions you need to ask yourself is, what's the end goal? You know, so if you're working a 9 to 5 and you just want to, by the age of 60, you want to own maybe 3 or 4 properties, you know, and have a good pension there to be paying you for retirement sort of thing, that's a very different strategy to someone that wants to become a millionaire in property, or have a full-time business in property, or, you know, become financially free, or quit their job within 5 years. Or you need to know what's your end goal, because there's a whole load of different options. And obviously each one, you know, determines the level of risk, how much capital you need to put in, how much time you need to put in. But I think once you realise what you want, then then you need to assess the different strategies. For instance, you know, you can flip properties, and I think now that probably in the next couple of years will be, you know, as prices are coming down because of interest rates are going up, I think that's going to be a good time to be buying. And then, you know, if you wanted to flip in a few years even, but I think the straight quick flips, there's still opportunities there for sure, but not quite like they used to be.
Right now you can get on the market generally because of the mortgage rates, you can actually get properties for a good price. Like, you can get cheeky offers accepted.
Exactly that.
So now it's a good time to actually get, if you've got the money, buy a property. Obviously the mortgage rates are higher, so you're going to pay more monthly, but if your strategy is to get it rented out anyways, or refinance it, then...
I had some advice actually from a friend of mine. He's actually my jeweller now, who I buy watches from. He's a multi-millionaire, has done very well in property. And he said, you know, if you're trying to buy your first property, and for people listening to this podcast, you might be trying to, you know, buy your first property, now's the right time to be putting in offers to landlords like massively below market value. The worst they're going to say is no. If you've got a new build up in, say, Purley or South Croydon, it's 400k, offer them 320.
Yeah.
What are they going to say? No, they might come back and say 350. Or, you know, if there's a 2-bed flat, which might not be a new build, it might be for 300k, 350, offer them 300. You know, it could now be a good time to get these properties through the door.
And especially over the next 12, 24 months for sure. And definitely an opportunity which I've seen a lot of people getting the best deals currently is, and this is a bit of luck, and you just need to be active in the market, you need to be networking with the right people. I'll discuss how to do that properly in a second, but it's people that have been close to a deal going through, and then the buyer had to pull out, their mortgage didn't get accepted, or for whatever reason they've had to withdraw their offer last minute, and it might have cost them both a bit of money or whatever. Now this person's panicking, and if you was about to buy a house off of me and you're hearing the markets could be, you know, going bad or crashing, and now you've just pulled out and I've lost money, and I'm thinking, oh no, like, you know, you start panicking and you start thinking this is it, they're going down and stuff. And then if you all of a sudden come in and you say, you know, he was buying it for 350, and you come in and say, look, here's my mortgage in principle, or I'm a cash buyer, or whatever, you prove you can move fast and you're willing to buy, and say, look, I've got 300,000, I can buy it right now, you know, and whatever, then that's where I'm seeing people pick up good deals at the second. I think off the fear of other people when they've just had someone reject or you know, pull out of the deal. Yeah,
because otherwise it's going to cost them money anyway.
Exactly, they just don't want that to happen again, and it's like, yeah, they kind of panic sell as such. And a lot of people are in a position where they're needing to sell their homes now, and that's only going to get worse and worse. As, like you said, your mortgage has gone from, what, 300 to 900 a month. So for a lot of people, their mortgage could have gone from 900 to 2,700. That just means they can't afford that now. Plus the increase of energy bills and food bills and whatever else, they're just forced to sell their house. Otherwise it's going to get repossessed or whatever. So it's like, if they have to sell it for an extra 30, you know, especially if they've already made profit in that property, if they have to lose 30 grand profit, well, it is what it is, and that's where you can pick up deals. But yeah, I think definitely cheeky offers is the way over the next 24 months.
Just going back to what you said earlier, so for somebody buying their first property, say it's a buy to let, for example, they're thinking about getting involved, even maybe rent to rent, you said firstly you need to know what your end goal is, but then prior to that you need to know what you want. How does someone find out what they want? And I know that sounds like a simple question, but for example, we're all quite into goal setting here, really digging deep in terms of what we want. But how would somebody who's listening to this, who might not have done goal setting before, or even actually thought about maybe where they want to be in 10 years, 20 years, even 5 years, how do they find out what they want? How do they find out what their end goal is?
It's a good question. I'm just trying to think of how I've gone about, because I think I've moved over the last years a lot from materialistic things to... I've always had the, a mix of goals, but I think the materialistic things are falling off quite a lot more as I'm getting a little bit older already. But I think, look, ultimately, for me, cash flow is king. Like, you want cash flow coming in, month out. That's never going to go away. Because that's how, if you do have an expensive month or you blow your money this month, you've got the money coming back in next month. It's security. That's what's going to allow you to retire when you're older, or, even an early retirement. It's stability. It's something you can pass on. And then I guess if you know you're going for cash flow, maybe in order to get that cash flow, you're probably going to need cash to inject. So that's where you could potentially look to do some joint ventures and stuff like that if you don't have the money early on. And go partner, you get the knowledge, you find the deals, you partner up with someone that does have the money but doesn't have the time. You could maybe do some flips to try and get some cash in the pot, get yourself your first 100k or whatever. That's going to allow you then to have the knowledge, the experience and the cash behind you to start moving into like the strategy, which I'm going to do, for example, which is the BRRR strategy, which is buy, refurbish, rent, refinance, repeat. And that's where you can get the cash flow, coming in and get your money back out of deals. So I'll explain that in a sec. And then from there, I guess once you've got if that is your goal and it is the cash flow, then I think, to be honest, you get started, you get 2 or 3 and you see £500 a month per property coming in. You've got £1,500 a month. I mean, for a lot of people, based off of what you just said on the average incomes and stuff like that, that's going to be life-changing to most people. 1,500 quid a month. From there, you can decide. You've seen how much work it is, you've seen how much time it is, you've seen how easy it is, how scalable it is. You've got some contacts, you've got the knowledge, you've made some mistakes. Now you can decide, okay, I am the type of person that now wants to get 10 properties, 20 properties. How could I go about doing that? And what kind of life is that going to give you? It's going to give you a very good life. It's going to take a lot more work, a lot more time, effort, money, but in 10, 20 years, if you're a long-term thinker, you can be chilling on a flipping yacht somewhere if you want, like, do you know what I mean? Whereas if some people I speak to, they're not interested, like a few of my friends, he just wants a few properties and he's just not interested in some of the wild goals that I have, or the mansions and the Rolls Royce and the watches, or the starting multiple businesses or investing in big things kind of stuff. So I think coming back to your question is, I don't really know. You kind of have to write that in terms of your goals. I think you kind of maybe just need to start by pen to paper, write it down. What do you want? Like, do you want the watch? Do you want the house? Just write down everything you ever want to own, and pen to paper is the best thing ever. Like, I think even I need to still do it so much more. Write a house and just say, right, when I'm 40 years old, if you're 20 now or whatever, or 50 years old, what house am I going to live in? It's going to be a 5-bedroom detached. It's going to be in Surrey. I'm going to have, what else do I want? A holiday home. Okay, that's going to be in Portugal. We're going to have a 3-bedroom villa with a private pool. I want this car. I want private healthcare from my family and my friends. I want, just start writing things down. And then I think KP, who we had on previously, touched on this. He said, write your life out and just see what cost it is. Well, that's going to cost me 10 grand a month, Plus,
I need that. Actually, if anybody's listening to this podcast and wants to work out what their average monthly income has to be to live the life you desire, once you've worked out your goals, how many holidays do you want to go on, what cars do you have, how much is your rent. I actually have a lifestyle calculator where you can even put in your food, your travel, your car payments, your holiday money into this calculator. It's really, really cool. Right. Yeah, my mentor gave it to me like 5 years ago. My lifestyle calculator's mad. I need to earn a lot more money before I'm there. But it's really interesting when you actually put pen to paper and you have like an Excel or Google Sheet spreadsheet, £500 a month on cars, £1,000 a month on food because you want to buy organic food, £2,000 a month saving, whatever it might be. Is personal to you listening to this. But hit me up in my Instagram DMs and I'll send you the lifestyle calculator because it's certified.
What's your figure? How much do you want a month coming in? Then you're like, let's say, 40, 45?
So like,
50?
how much money do I want to earn per month according to my calculator, or how much I want to...
How much?
So, I mean, my short-term goal is 10,000 a month take home. It's been that for a couple of years. Gradually working towards it. I hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about, £10,000 a month when your life really changes. You can buy what you want, your rent's covered, your mortgage is covered, your cars are covered, your savings covered. So apparently that's when life gets real fun, But by the age of 40, I mean, look, I'm different to how I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm not interested in being a billionaire. Millions are probably inevitable one day, of course. I mean, even just to have £1 million these days probably isn't enough.
No.
But I think for me, anything around sort of 15, 20 a month take home when I'm 40,
really?
Depending on how crazy inflation's going to be, I think for me probably that's enough.
Fair.
Yeah.
I've never worked out.
Really?
I have to DM Sam. In my head.
I'll send you my lifestyle calculator.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked out a little bit, but like, it always goes round to be 10k. But
10k, but you're like you're basically there, no?
Well, our business.
I know we're not paying. I know obviously you're not going to pay yourself from your business account to your personal, but you're there in the numbers.
I think short term it's 10k though.
Yeah,
that's short
for sure.
term. That's what get to 10k, and then
I think sometimes paying yourself too much isn't always the wisest thing because of tax reasons.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you're there really, but you're just not there because you're not paying yourself it.
If we wanted to, we could probably pay ourselves 10k a month. We might have to fire a couple of staff. If you're listening to this, you're safe.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess it's getting out into the right planes. Obviously, as well, we have different goals, different things we're trying to achieve. So obviously that comes into it as well, about how we can get the money out tax efficiently. But that's why I think we're actually trying to find ways to do that. Yeah,
I mean, every day I think about Dubai. Like every single time, I've never even been there. I think about Dubai every single day. I've got friends out there paying no tax. If you want to pay yourself 10k a month in Dubai, you will take home 10k a month. If you want to take home 10k a month in the UK, got to pay yourself, I don't know, 20k a month maybe, 18k.
Those obviously they're good numbers, but they're not like need to come across in the right way, really, innit? But like, it's not. You can blow that money very. I mean, bloody hell, in Dubai, when I was there for 2 weeks, it's like $8,000 gone. Vegas 5 days gone. It's like, mate, that money can go quick, and that's not going wild. Like, I mean, I think if you want a proper good lifestyle, you need nowadays. I think you need to be doing at least $500,000 a year. I'd say when you're older.
So take home money.
Yeah, like when you've got kids. Like if you want a good luxury life, you're gonna need good money behind you. 30, 40, 50k a month, which sounds crazy, but it's not really, because well, it is. It is crazy. Obviously, it's crazy, but not if you want a proper luxury lifestyle. Like, do you know what I mean? If you want to be completely free to travel where you want, when you want, have the properties you want, have the cars you want, the watch you want, go out where you want, treat your kids kids are flipping expensive as well, do you know what I mean? And if you're providing for you, your wife, your 2 kids, let's say, and you want a good solid life for everyone, as well as not blowing all your money, still investing back into investments and businesses and stuff like that, like, yeah, I think
it depends how you want to live, right?
Yeah,
like,
obviously.
For example, some people want like the yachts, the jets, etc. For me, that don't really interest me. It used to, but like it comes down to goal setting. I genuinely believe with goal setting, like the truth will always set you free. Like the truth will set you free. And when I used to set goals when I was working in the broking industry, I was encouraged to set goals for Ferraris, yachts, jets, like fucking $100,000 watches. None of it meant shit to me.
Yeah.
Like it didn't mean anything to me. But it was on my goals board. I look at it every day. I just look at it like, yeah, that's nice. Because it is nice. I definitely have it. But like when I actually started to fuck with goals that meant something to me, like taking my mum on a ski holiday, I've wanted to do that for the last 2 years. I just come back taking my mum from a ski holiday in Austria. Like for me, that was the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. Like I remember I bought a Rolex June last year, had it for 10 minutes, and I was like, I want a Submariner now. Do you know what I mean? And then like you might get a sub, you're like, I want a Daytona. So I've realised like the materialistic stuff for me, it's like you're chasing something which I feel like there's always something better. Like you must have had it surely. Like I know you've got a Merc. I've got a new Mercedes GLA. Nothing too crazy. I think it was September last year. Within 5 minutes, Luke got a GLC, and I was like, I want to get a GLC now. Do you know what I mean? And then when we get the GLC, it will be like, right, let's get the S-Class or Lambo or Ferrari. So for me, like my goals are very different now. So I think anyone listening to this in terms of goals, like if you might be materialistic, I still am to a certain extent, that's fine. But, you know, bear in mind, the truth will always set you free with your goals. So think really what you want, put pen to paper. And then you have to have a plan, because goal without planning is just dreaming.
Yeah,
you know?
100%. You need a full plan. And you need to actually just sometimes don't listen to what other people say unless they're good people to listen to. But just do the numbers. I think I said this in like the first episode or something. Just do the numbers and see whatever it might be. Let's say it's 20k a month. Just because you got no money now, just start researching, start doing some numbers, start breaking down what would it take to get there over, let's say, a 20-year period. If I was reinvesting, if I was letting the profits compound up and, you know, the properties, like, if you realise if you can get to 5 or 10 properties, for instance, and just then by, you know, the value going up, you're refinancing, you draw money out every like 5 years, on average, you know, a good property will double in a 10-year period of time. You know, so if every 5 years you're refinancing, that's tax-free money if you do it properly. You move that back into new properties, and you do that plus the positive cash flow per property coming in. Let's say you're making £500 a property, for instance, and you manage to get to 10 properties, that's £5,000 a month. If every time, you know, you've accumulated enough deposit back into another property, and every time that the properties rise in a good amount of value, like I said, every 5 years, for example, refinance all that money, as many properties as you can get. But you do that for like 20 years, you're going to have like a good amount of properties. I don't have my notebook now, but probably like 40 properties just there, and that's going to be probably generating then £25,000 a month there. And I'm not saying it's easy to get there, but get started. You know, if you look to buy properties, this is the other thing. If you want to be buying properties, if you're going to get started, definitely go for a cheaper property. Don't find the cheapest place in the UK, because the cheapest place...
That grims me.
Yeah, the cheapest place today is probably going to be the cheapest place in 10 years. Yeah, so you want to kind of, for instance, a place that I like to look into is Nottingham. You've got Bristol, but that's quite expensive. But Nottingham's good with very good yield. Manchester's expensive, but it's got, you know, if you want capital appreciation, Manchester's a really good place to invest in. Even Liverpool, Birmingham, these type of areas.
Leicester.
But... yeah, exactly. So if you can, I mean, in Nottingham, I roughly am looking at the properties between 100 and 150k. But you can get like an apartment or something to get started, or a small house for 80 grand.
Just a question on that, actually. So what do you think ideally is a better strategy, right? Because, you know, to buy a property, say, in Newcastle or Hull, you can do a lot easier than buying a property, say, where we're from, South Croydon, Purley, Surrey. Yeah. Right? So do you think it's better to have less but with a higher appreciation potential, or to have more with maybe a lower appreciation potential? Like, what do you think is the best strategy there?
I've definitely, you want to be moving up north to us, depends where you are in the country. But so like the yields around where we are, majority of them are terrible. I think that average is like 4%, 5%. Like, I mean, that's not even keeping up with inflation. And you'll be surprised, you know, for the first time in Greater London stuff, the appreciation's actually not even outdone the rest of certain areas of the UK. So you can actually hit good spots where you're getting the appreciation, which is the whole property going up in value. It goes from, you know, 100k to 150k, so you've made 50k there. Plus you're getting much better cash flow, which is, you know, the mortgage might be £300 and you're renting it out for £800. That's £500 in positive cash flow minus your fees and stuff. Whereas down south, you might have to be paying a mortgage of, you know, £1,000 to, if you're buying now, obviously you must have bought at a good time and stuff, Luke, but to be renting out, well, even now, what your thing is currently with the rates,
right now,
900.
So really, I'm just
minus your fees,
money off the actual.
Exactly.
If it goes up, the price is flat. Yeah.
But I think you always want to. The best way to scale is you want to have as little money in the property as possible. You want your mortgage as low as possible. So to do that, you do interest only. to keep as little money in the property possible, so you don't want to put as big a deposit as you possibly can. So for a buy to let, you want to do your 25%, which is the minimum you can do, and then not every year, but because obviously you want to probably fix yourself into a few year mortgage deals. But like I said, every 5 years, let's say, as the property goes up in value, you can refinance the property, which means the new value. So if it goes from 100,000 to 150,000, there's that 50,000. I can now refinance, which means now, instead of when it was at 100k, I had to have 25,000 in the property as the deposit. I now need 25% of the new value, 150,000, which is 37,500 if my maths is good. So you need to leave that in. So on top of 25,000, I shouldn't be doing the maths on 12.5 grand extra. So 50 minus 12.5 is, it's like 37.5 grand. You could draw back out of the property, right? That's going to allow you to go and buy now, put a deposit down on another property. Do you see what I mean? And you can rinse and repeat this. Obviously, to get started, it's a lot easier if you buy up north because you need a smaller deposit than down here. You can make more money cash per month. And like I say, you can just keep rinsing and repeating and move the money and all of your profits, draw it out back into new deals. But
what are the risks?
So one thing I think is, especially if you're not going to get it from around here, let's say most people are going to buy up north now, like definitely the next one I get will be up north. Let's say it's 80k.
Yeah.
Then it's like not knowing, you actually don't know anyone in that area, right? So you might buy the wrong area, so do your research, but also, let's say you're doing it, you want to buy it to do it up a little bit, which I think that's all of our pro plans, right?
Yeah.
Is that obviously knowing good people to go and do that, because it's well and good, like you've got a building company down here, so at least you're gonna have to see through it.
Yeah.
But then still finding good, reliable people in a different area, that's one thing that's definitely going to be a challenge, I'd say, and can be a risk.
So this is where I'd say, so this is the strategy, first of all, what I'm talking about is, so you buy the property, this is the BRRR strategy. So you buy the property, then what you want to do, if you structure this as you buy a limited company, you set up a limited company, then you have how HMRC, you have repair and you have improvement. Now repair is tax, you can write off your tax bill. So that means if the property, if you bought this house and the ceilings are falling down and there's flipping mold on the walls, the windows are smashed, clearly I'm repairing that property. So if I now spend 40 grand to repair all of this and make it all good, I can take that £40,000 and I can write it off my tax bill, or for the future tax bills as well, so you can actually carry it forward for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So then as you're making that let's say I did spend £40,000, that comes off the tax deductible income. If I'm making them £500 per month in positive cash flow, well, I've got however many months that is, to take up that 40k. So it's very good. It's very tax efficient. So you've got repair and improvement. Improvement you can't write that off your tax bill, right? And also mortgage payments. This is why I say to do interest only. Interest of a mortgage, you can take off your tax bill, write off your tax. If you're repaying any payments towards your mortgage, you can't write that off your tax bill. So let's say if I was paying £1,000 a month on a mortgage, 500 was interest, 500 was paying off the mortgage. Well, 500 of that isn't going to come off my tax bill. So I'm going to get still taxed on the full amount, sort of like what we talked about with Section 24 earlier. So that's not a good idea if you're trying to build an empire in properties and as much cash flow. So do interest only, keep the cash flow as big as you can, positive cash flow per month coming in as big as you can. You buy a shithole house that clearly needs repair. Don't try and do over HMRC because you'll get caught out. Make sure it genuinely needs repair, or it might need part repair, part improvement, and you can take a hit on part of the improvement because it's still adding to the capital appreciation of the property. So you buy a proper shithole, let's say at an auction or an off-market deal. I'll talk about how to do that in a second. Now, let's say the property, even in this condition, was at like £100,000 probably valued. You can be looking for off-market deals where there's sources and stuff which you can find in property groups and stuff like that for free on Facebook and stuff like that, where you might pay them £2,000 fee, but they will source a property that's below market value for you. So let's say its value is 100k, even in this shit state, you might be able to get that for 90k. So it's already, you've got that margin. yeah, of like 10k, you know, technically in profit, let's say.
Yeah.
Then you spend 10 grand on a refurb, 15 grand on a refurb. This property might now be worth, you know, you don't do that just to add that value, you do that to make profit. This is where, you know, obviously I've got the knowledge and the experience because I've got a building company. You need to know where to spend the money and where to make savings and stuff like that. But over time, that's going to come. But if you make the property now look nice and stuff, you spent 15k, you know, that property might now be worth 125 grand, let's say, or 130 grand. So if you bought it for 90, yes, you've had to put in the cash injection of 15 on top of that, but you've got that extra 40k. Now, after 6 months from when you buy the property, you have to wait at least 6 months to then refinance it. You do exactly that. You refinance, you leave 25% in the property, and then obviously with the profits, depending on how good the deal is, either sometimes you can get all of your initial money back out in your pocket after 6 months, which means you can move that straight into another deal, or you might, I mean, once you get really good down the line, you know, some deals you'll even make profit from your initial back in your pocket, or even if it was, you know, you got 75% of your money back out. Let's say I put in a deposit of 90. Oh, I need to stop testing my maths here. But let's say I'd put in like 30 grand and I got 20 grand out. Now I'm only 10 grand in and I still own the house. I'm still getting the positive cash flow every month, you know, and so that money you can take and you can repeat on another property, or you might have to wait another 12 months either from the positive cash flow from that property to top up that money again to get all your money back out, or maybe you're working or your business is paying or whatever and you've managed to accumulate that money to go again. That's why it's repeat. So it's buy, refurbish, rent out, refinance and then repeat. Does that make sense? Don't know how well I explained that, but that's the strategy, and that way that's how you can keep turning, you know, the better the deals. And the thing is, everyone, I think, when they try to get started, and I've been guilty of this, and especially at the minute I'm guilty of this because of how I think the market's heading, trying to find like the perfect deal where, I want to get all my money back out and stuff. That's obviously the goal, but I think you need to start on a small one like 80k, so that even if you don't get it all out, it's not the end of the world. Even if the deal didn't go amazing and it's your first one and you learnt lessons and you thought, you know what, I can flip this for profit, but what I've learnt now, I can go and do it better on a different deal. That's not an issue as well. You could just flip it, pay your tax, whatever, still make some profit. You've learned and you've got the momentum to now properly go and do it. So yeah, that's what I think.
Like you said about risks as well, basically. So
yeah.
What you said, and what a lot of people don't know is that you can pay people. Like, let's say there's people out there that don't have any money but want to be in property, so their job is literally just to go and find deals for other people that do have money, and they will just sell the deal for $3 grand. Which is that's a really good way of getting into property as well and learning it. So those people, but also those people are sometimes quite new, so you've got to be careful that if you get these deals that the information, you're gonna have to do a little bit of fact checking, because a lot of people will say, I've got this deal, it's money back, you're definitely getting the money back, put the 30k in, you're about to get the 30k out 6 months time. Definitely got to do your due diligence.
Yeah, and I think that the Facebook groups, for instance, go on Facebook, you'll find loads of property group chats. There's lots of property networking events that you can find online in your local area. There's lots of property guys on YouTube and on Instagram and stuff like that you can learn from. But what I would say, if you're going to these events, if you're going into these groups, just take a bit of time. Give yourself a good few months. Give yourself 6 months to try and learn, and keep your credit cards in your pocket, because you will get a lot of people just initially trying to sell. We're all for mentoring, but just give yourself 6 months, because you know it's a long-term plan property. And you'll have a lot of people trying to sell you things, like I said, a lot of new sources and stuff. And if you spend a bit of time in these group chats and researching different property people, you'll start getting a feel for who's legit, who's not legit. You'll have some good conversations with people you can see that are clearly successful, that probably aren't selling a course, let's say. They might be able to help guide you and give you some tips and stuff on how to navigate through these groups to filter through the ones that are actually legit to not legit. Maybe you know someone in your area that does property. Maybe you've got someone in family or friends, or someone that's already done property. You can speak to them. Not necessarily just own 1 or 2 properties, but someone that's actually properly in property and they've got a go-to sourcer and stuff like this, mortgage advisor, accountant and stuff. It's all important to make sure you set up the company correctly.
Just on that as well, actually. So as Joe just said, we all believe in like mentorship very heavily here. It's one of the reasons we are where we are today. But at the same time, especially in property, You know, there's a lot of people out there that are coaching but probably don't even own a property themselves, or might have a couple of rent-to-rent properties. And you know, for me and Luke and Jake, who's not here today, from being involved in rent-to-rent, it's not as easy as they make it sound. There's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of things that can fuck up and go wrong. So it's like Joe said, fact check. You know, how do you fact check? You know, look into the company, then go on Company's House, type in the company's name on Company's House. A lot of people don't know this. If you type in a company's name on Company's House, you can bring up the filing history. So you can see when they got incorporated, you can even see the balance sheets, you can see the tax returns, you can see how much money they actually turned over. You know, when you've actually done that, they might have had, say, £1 million turnover or gross profit that year, but is that just for the coaching company? If so, it's still a good sign, but what you want to do is you want to find out that property company. You know, what is that property limited company trading under? Company's House, fact check that, and that's going to give you a good indication as to, you know, if these guys really are who they say they are. Because, you know, I'd never drop names on this podcast, but there's a lot of people who have approached me, or I've got hit with ads about social media marketing mentorships. When you actually look into these companies, you'll be so surprised that I'd say probably 80% of the gurus out there, like no cap, 80% of the gurus out there don't have an agency, or they had an agency and it's flopped and it's failed. So, you know, research, but research in a smart way. Company's House.
I think you can get a good feel for people if they're just trying to sell, or, you know, I've had conversations with a lot of people that haven't got anything to sell and just gave me advice. You know, I spoke to people where he had just got started in his first year. Like, I remember he just closed a deal and he's like, yeah, he was back making like all money out of the deal, like doing the strategy I just said. He's getting like $2,000 a month in positive cash flow for not even a large initial investment. And like, these are the, you know, I spoke to so many people like that. Obviously, I spoke to loads of people now in property, and I think that also helps. For instance, like at Founders Club, there's a lot of people in property there, and when I give my strategies or how I'm going to do it and all the tax efficient ways and how to structure the company, like the biggest players in the room are in agreement with doing what I'm saying, and not many people actually do that. So it's like, just to add back onto obviously the structure of the company. So for instance, how I'm going to structure mine, obviously I've got my building company. So what you can do, this gets a little bit more technical. So again, feel free to reach out in case I don't explain it too well now. I can always go through it in more detail on Instagram or whatever. But like, I'm going to have a holding company, right? So I'm going to restructure I've currently got a limited company for my building company. I'm going to have a holding company. Under that holding company, I'll have the company as it is now, the Pure Projects Limited Company. Then this is the only area I need to decide on how many properties per limited, because you can set up a limited company for each property you own. That has some benefits, but it also has some downsides. The answer I've come up with so far is probably going to do a few, 4 or 5 in one limited company, and then 4 or 5 in another, and 4 or 5, but they're all linked because you've got a holding company. Basically, all of it's good for security and protection for all your companies. Basically, they're all protected as their own entities, but all the money and all the profits and stuff feed back to the holding company. So the holding company doesn't trade. It just owns the shares to these limited companies, right? So worst case, if something did happen, legal side of things, well, these companies don't own anything. It's the holding company, and they can't sue the holding company because they've had no transaction with the holding company, right? So that's one benefit. The other benefit is you can offset your profit and losses between the companies. Now, going back to what I said about the repair, so now I've got this limited company with some properties, yeah? You can actually get to a stage where I could have an investor. You could invest £200,000 to me, right? You could loan this company that 200,000. I can use that 200,000 to do repairs in multiple properties, yeah? Do the refinance, draw the money back out. Even, if there is leftover money, that's the money I'm going to have to cash inject myself, because I'm still going to obviously own the properties moving forward. But let's say the deal plays out perfect and I get all the money out, right, for the sake of the podcast. So you give me 200k, I buy the properties, I do the repairs, 6 months time I refinance, I draw all that 200k back out, and maybe this profit, maybe it's not, I now owe you an extra 8% on top of that investment or whatever, right? Whatever our agreement is. I pay you back, yeah. This company can still offset that 200k of repairs against your tax, Yeah, because you're doing up homes and you're doing a good thing. There's homes that were in no state to live in, and now, you know, we've come in, we've put the cash injection to get these back to livable. The government likes that, so they help you out. They let you write that off your tax bill, so it's all fair, it's all legit. But like I say, because you can offset between your different companies, I've now got 200k to write off of taxable profits. Now, these properties aren't going to make me 200k anytime soon, so I don't want them just sat there. But because it's linked to like my building company, for example, I could move. If my building company made 200k profit, I could take that whole 200k and offset it against my building company, meaning my building company would now owe no tax. And nor would any of my companies. Do you know what I mean? So it's a very tax efficient way of doing it. And rightly so. Like I say, it's all, you know, it makes sense, right? If there's homes sat there with no one living in, the government want new homes. It's like, okay, well, look, you invest the money, you do the time, you make them all to a livable standard, and we're going to help you out by letting you obviously take that off your tax bill. So it's, you know, it's a win-win for everyone. You know, people get homes to live in, the government haven't had to really do anything, and you obviously get right off your tax bill. So that's the best way to structure it. If you've got, especially if you're in business and you've got your own company elsewhere, that's how a really tax efficient way. And at the end of it, you've paid back the investor, you still own the properties. Don't ever give them any shares of the property. You just agree a rate, 8%, 10%, whatever it is, to give them back on their loan, their investment. You still own the properties at the end of it, so you have an asset. You've also wrote off your tax bill of this other company, or a significant amount of it, and you're getting the positive cash flow every month. Rinse and repeat that, you know, and that's how you can seriously build a large portportfolio.
Yeah, I think it's clever.
With other people's money.
What you said.
Yeah, because
that part of that's clever.
Ultimately, you can only, you know, unless you're already rich, you can only build an empire so big in property in your lifetime unless you use other people's money, right? So that answers the question for me already. When I knew I want a big property empire, I thought, well, I'm going to need other people's money. So let me do it myself first. Let me do a few myself. You know, I've got credibility. I've got the building company and whatever else. I've got the knowledge. I've got the contacts. I can get things done cheap. So I've got all of that for me already. Now I just need to do a few. I've got my strategy. I know how to structure the company. Now I just need to do a few myself. Like I say, I'll start on cheaper ones anyway, just in case. Worst case scenario, you know, I'm doing it on an 80 grand house, not an 800 grand house. And then I can go to an investor and it's like, well, look, here's the opportunity, here's the deal. I've got the deals. I've already got contacts for sourcing like off-market deals and stuff like that. And then, yeah, you can use other people's money to buy me houses, to produce me cash flow, and to help write off my tax bill. Like, it's bloody genius. Hi guys, I'm just going to jump in there as we're going to cut this episode in two, as we've got a lot to go in the part two. We're talking about a lot more strategies in a lot more detail, and we just want to give you the opportunity to actually listen carefully and learn. So join us for part two following this episode.